First thing is when we talk about documentary making and how to represent, and many things are important, and people are aware about so many things already because of the social media that's taken over the world, especially during lockdowns and COVID situation. Everybody is on phone and everybody is connected with the internet. So more of energies have been pushed in this sector. Most of you may be dreaming of becoming a great vlogger sometime, or maybe starting your own YouTube channels and traveling the world and making documentaries. I'm sure many of you may dream of making cinema eventually. So this world of representation that we start with is the documentary, right? So documentary has many purposes and many fields, as we know. One documentary is a very simple documentary of documenting a space which is as it is there. Ethnographic approach, as we say, from social anthropology that we say, right? What you observe, just record it and give it a narrative and present to the people. A very simple way of making a documentary. The other comes with a script, right? You first plan out, you do things, you write your things, and then start shooting. So that's another approach. Then there is a cinema approach where you have a protagonist who's working in the documentary and visuals. That's a different approach. I'm not here to give you the copybook style of documentary making and giving you theories after theories. Rather, we are going to look into this workshop into a very interesting turn of words and how it makes sense in your head. My idea of doing a workshop and training has always been that if I could create some imaginations in your head, when I speak, if you can think about some certain things in your head, it means I'm on the track. I'm able to convince you about some things. I'm able to communicate with you. That's the whole idea here. So I'm not going with a theoretical approach that first learn what are the approaches of making a documentary, what type of documentaries are there. So you can search that on web and you'll find it. So I'm not here to tell you that. Then why I'm here? I'm here to just pull a trigger somewhere in your head that it's not about learning from someone else. It's about your own experiences, your own narratives and meta narratives above it, right? You remember the stories told to you by your parents in this childhood, by your dadima, or my dadima said so many stories about the world. When I grew up, I look into the world and then could relate certain stories but couldn't relate so many stories. It means what? One narrative ended and the other started with my own sense, right? That happens to everybody. Right. So some stories are there in your background that gives you a background of knowledge to evaluate certain things that you experience in your life yourself, right? That come from teacher, from your parents, from your friend. So what are these? These are experiences, and experiences give you certain meanings that we in everyday life say what? Perceptions. I'm sure everybody has heard the word perception and they use it every day, isn't it? The beginning of any documentary is a perception that you have about something, right? Now it all depends upon that what kind of perceptions you have in your everyday life, and are you planning to represent something out of it and provide a story to people around you or to yourself first, right? That is the beginning point. The inception for a documentary is not lying outside in some cinema or some person, not in me, not in Prabhuddha sir. It lies inside your own ideas, in your own experiences in your life. So if you can locate that, that is the beginning. So many people when ask me a question that, how to actually begin the documentary making process. The process is introspection. The process is creation of perceptions and bringing out that filter. You may be using Instagram filters and so many other filters, right? Snapchat filters. So then you have to filter out, apart from all the perceptions, you have to filter out and bring that one idea that really resonates with your thinking, because your thinking is the most primary thing. Right? If I am able to communicate with you people, can you give me a thumbs up in your screens so that I know if I'm able to communicate with everyone? Right, thank you. So because it's a medium which I always need interaction with people, so here only interaction is thumbs up. So thank you so much. And with this perception thing, so many things are there and there is a flurry of words around you, right? If I say so, everyday life from morning to the time you go to your bed, you are surrounded with so many words, vocabulary I'm saying, right? I'm just giving you a clue how to start documentary making. So here on your screen, I've just put an image and documenting the field and my name and my brand that I'm promoting here at the GeoEcologist, right? The idea here is on the screen that just by looking at this picture, you can have several stories of your own. Just look at this picture, it gives you so many stories. Everybody can interpret this into different ways, right? And how do you interpret is what I was talking about, is your perception. Somebody thinks it's a snowland, it's a mountainous area, it's a Himalayan region, or it's an Alps, right? Somebody may look into the peaks and think, okay, some peaks are snow covered, some are not, right? It means it's summertime. Some may think about what is this elongated structure passing in the between of this image, right? So that is a mountain pass. And when you come to know, oh, this is Rohtang Pass from ground zero. If you go and trek upside in the Rohtang, you'll find this is exactly the pass. Now the tunnel has been made. So this is Rohtang Pass for you. So this is what gradually with perceptions after knowledge creation happens. And then you finally have a concrete knowledge about something. So this is the process. So going to the process, now I'll take you to a journey of concept, right? How you conceptualize in everyday life, how many words you go through. So first of all, just look into these words, and when I give you these words, close your eyes for that moment and think, when you hear the word, what comes to your mind? What is the image that is built here? So first word is see. So you see generally, every day you use the word see, or you see through your eyes. View, observe, visualize, gaze, glance, look, watch, right? So many words. Cognize, peep, stare, ogle, perceive, notice, spot, glimpse, right? And from here comes the three word that you can observe here is recognize, review, and research. Now if you observe carefully, you just added a prefix called re, in the cognition itself, in the view itself, in the search itself. So basically, why these words? Because we are surrounded with these words with specific meanings. Out of all these words, some words have just the sense function, like function of the eye, right? So your task is to see which words are just the function of eye. It does not have to do anything with the brain, right? Then there are certain words which are not just function of eye, but when eye sends the message to the brain, then that word is valid for you, right? So eye plus brain function is the second kind of words. And then third kind of words is where we are, that after the brain gives you a message, okay, this thing that is in front of you is this particular thing, that is the knowledge part. And then you apply this framework to again restructure it, remap it, recognize it, review it, research it. That is the entire process, right? Now this process is not theoretical process, right? And coming from the society, because you're based on practical applications, you know, everyday life you do this. You create this perceptions and knowledge every day, right? So what you observe here is the next set of thing related to research, right? When you are doing research, what exactly you relate the research with? Which kind of word list do you have in your everyday life? This is what it is. Either you are doing an investigative research or experimental research, or are you testing something, exploring something? You're doing assessment, analysis, fact finding, examination, scrutiny, or you say scrutinization, or are you probing something through groundwork, fieldwork, documentation, all these things that you observe here, right? That is what is making the research part, and which is exactly related to how you operate in documentary making process, right? So if you have these words, now what is important here is the approach. One approach which is very common for documentary making, known by most of you already, I believe, is ethnographic approach. You go to the space, document what is happening on the space just by sitting at one corner or one position, and create imaginations that is on your head and manifest it on the space. That how are you looking into space? For example, a city called Mumbai has been represented by generations of people in different ways. Right from Sri 420 Raj Kapoor to Life in a Metro 2008. 50 years of change in Mumbai. Can you see the city itself? How they have represented, imaginations have changed. The same space is there, but imaginations keep changing, mapping, changes. So what happens? The crucial aim of education, because you all and all of us belong to this sector, is what? Not to just accept what is given or it is told to you as stories. Okay, if you go there, this will happen, or this is this reality of a place. So what is the real aim of education? The question is the real aim of education. If you don't question, right, then your inquiry is zero. And when your inquiry is not there, it means you'll not have further thought, right? And that's why spatial thinking will not come to you if you don't question. So question comes as the primary process operator, right? So if you have questions in your mind at the beginning, looking at everything around the world that you experience through direct experiences or indirect experiences, then you can come to this conclusion that now what needs to be done. So spatial thinking and ethnographic approach is one approach that help all the students and researchers to do what? To understand and interpret their own responses, where we interpret and understand the responses related to people, places, or event, or we can say phenomena. 3 words are good enough. Either you are documenting people, right, their cultures, their behavior, or you are talking about places, or you're talking about a phenomena or an event. Mostly you're doing yourself in this 3 zone, right? So when you observe that, it allows us to differentiate and reflect on different perspectives, right? And when I say perspective, it is not perception. Perception after a long period of time becomes perspective when it is more concretized or synthesized, or you can say metamorphosed, right? For example, if I want to tell you how perception to perspective you can build is, when you have not traveled into Himalayan region, say Ladakh you have not gone, everybody wants to go to Ladakh on bike trip and solo trip and so many things, you don't realize how hard it is to travel in Ladakh region, right? And when you go there, you understand, oh, what are the things? My preparation, it was just half of what I thought. You'll have different perspectives when you go to Ladakh, because you are right now looking here sitting in Delhi NCR or anywhere in the India or world that Ladakh is just like this, what people have represented, but now it's your time to represent it. So perspectives and the differences that is there is important in documentary making. And the third and most important thing is that if you can understand how you have to sensitively engage in the study which is related to the field rather than classroom. It's not a classroom study. You're going to the direct live, audience, people, places. You're there as a person, right? That is what is the difference between an acting in cinema and documentary, right? It's not just acting. It's actually as real as it gets, right? So while approaching the subject, now comes to the actual work here. Till now I was just building up that how you are going to approach and what are the key factors. Now just look into it. There are 3 P's, PPP, right? So it's not purchasing power parity, right? And it's not private public partnership. It's basically what? First P is percept concept dynamics. That matters when you're approaching a subject. For example, the subject in your screen, if you see a lady with an axe, you can have any perception about her. And gradually when you go close to her, when you talk to her, that will make change that was in the beginning, and finally you will come with a different concept from the place she belongs. So this percept concept dynamics is very important to understand. So that is the first P. The second is the perspective. For example, insider or outsider, right? That is one thing which is important. Are you from the state or the district or the location, or are you an outsider and going to capture something or document something? So there it will be very important. An insider story will be different than an outsider story, right? And then positionality is the third thing. So positionality is about the debates that exist in our society, and those debates are power debates, class debates, gender debates, hierarchy debates. Why? Because they have different narratives of the things that is happening there, right? So where is this position in your documentary? You should be aware about it. That we are talking about making a documentary from which perspective, from which position are you looking? Where will your camera position be there to figure out that is your positionality coming through what you're recording, or recording is going somewhere else and you are thinking something else. So then it will not come in, in a proper manner. The output will not come. So these 3P is the basic, if you say, percept concept dynamic, perspectives and positionality. And to just manifest it, what I'm saying here is one important thing on your screen right now. Just take a look for 10 seconds on this image. I've just taken this image while I was traveling from some place in Guwahati to Delhi, and I just took this image from the flight. Now what you observe here is, people can say it's a river, it's a meandering river, it's a oxbow lake. If people know geography and if you have studied that in school, you know what is an oxbow lake. meandering river, oxbow lake, plain area, all these things, solar reflection, you can say green patch of land, dark patch of land. This is what you can just interpret from the image, right? This is one perspective, one way of thinking, and you can have other thinking ways as well. Now just what I'll do is, I'll give it an antipode to this, just opposite of it. Now you just look into this image and suddenly you realize, oh, is it Hindi alphabet? Ooh. Or is it Om written? Is it signifying some religion thing related to Om? Is it some mantra through river? Right? That is what matters. That if you want to represent it in which way, how you're interpreting it and how you're presenting it is the same image upside down. That's what I was talking about, 3P, percept, concept, dynamics, perceptions to perspectives and to positionality. That's very important here. So these are the things that you come across everyday life, right? So what is important here is that in approach, what you need to do is, first thing, that there are several subjects. And it is not fixed to one subject, this approach. In sociology, we do it. In anthropology, we do it. In geography, we do it. In architecture, we do it. History, economics, environmental studies. So if you come from any field, right? So you can do this documentary making. It's not about one subject. It's an interdisciplinary thing, right? But what you need to do is you should be aware about the key ingredients if you're cooking, right? That's what you're doing. Documentary making is just like cooking. If you're interested in cooking, you must know first of all that what are you going to cook and who is going to eat it, right? First question is, what are you going to cook? You know, that is what is philosophically the ontology question. What exists? And then comes the other questions. Okay, now this is what I'm doing. So how, where, why, all the questions you'll answer gradually. That is how documentary starts. So next important point for all you people who are going to do it in future is, what is the most important factor here is ethics of fieldwork and documentary making. Now, why is that very important? Because earlier it was more ethical in social being, human being were, but as technology grew, we started becoming a little, away from ethics, somewhat, ruthless about not thinking about taking permissions from people before clicking pictures and, just in the name of candid, you do anything. So what happens? Ethical approach is very much important, right? Unless you are making a documentary on non-ethical approach itself, right? So you have to be aware about ethics. So basic ideas in ethics that is listed here. First is selection of site and study without vested interest. If you have a vested interest, it means bias comes with the same. And if you are biased, what will happen? The biasness has to be minimized at all the levels, right? As much as less biased you will be, that much better documentary it would be rated, right? So vested interest is one thing that you should take care of. Release of sensitive information. Now what happens? You should be aware about what is sensitive and to whom. Some information could be sensitive to the local people themselves, some to the administrator, some for the national security. So you should be aware about sensitive information that you're documenting. Issues related to data ownership. Now, if you are using somebody else's data, then you should give the credit. You should not do the plagiarism, right? If you're taking data from the villagers, from the local people, from wherever you're traveling, right? You should give them credit or at least ask for data rather than take it yourself. Then comes unexpected outcomes, and this is very important for a documentary maker. Why? Because most of the people fix themselves in a particular way when they are making documentaries, that I am going to do only this and in this way. But you never know, the field is full of serendipities, right? Accidental findings, unexpected outcomes. This is what is very important. Then comes necessary permissions that you take. Because I worked in Lahul Spiti and Ladakh in North Sikkim, most of them were close to China borders and I had to seek permissions from the government. Otherwise, I would not have been doing my work there, right? So necessary permissions at all levels. Even if you're recording somebody's voice, first you seek permission. That's what necessary permissions is, right? Prediction of possible harms, right? For example, if you're making a documentary on somebody and when you present it in the media and somebody is harmed because of your documentary, you should take care of it pre-hand. Right? So that is very important. Degree of anonymity or confidentiality is very important. If you are talking about a sensitive subject, right? If you are working in an area which were a part of some riots in the history, which is very sensitive, right? You should take care of anonymity, you should take care of confidentiality of information related to that. Then establishing a rapport with your subject, with your field, very important for a documentary maker. For example, how I see this is, if you're going to a Himalayan region or any village or any place in the country, and you are dressed in a very typical urbanite way, I'm just talking about dress, your goggles and specs, and you're very fashionable sitting here in Delhi, and you go in the same way, it creates a barrier between you and your subject. You know why? Because they will never treat you like their own, because there is a clear-cut distinction between, oh, ye to shahri hai, ye to shahar se aaya hai, hum to gaon wale hain, right? So establishing a rapport is a very important thing in documentary making. Not that I have placed in this list at later, so it's less important. No, this is not the ranking. I'm just giving you random things in the list. So establishing a rapport is as important as any other point. If you don't have a rapport with your subject, with your ground, with the people, your documentary will fail to convince the viewers. That's very important. And learning local norms of conduct wherever you are traveling, where you are going, where you're conducting it. And lastly, and the most important in today's world, is please be inspired, but don't take somebody's work. And even if you take, first seek permission, but do give the credit, right? But don't copy the work. Somebody's work is somebody's work, it's not your work. And if you really want to make a documentary, it should be your work. Otherwise, it will never give you a sound sleep at night, a satisfaction in life. So no plagiarism is what I really promote. And I believe that you are not going to plagiarize in future when you're making your own documentaries, right? Now comes to keeping record. Finally, how you record these documentaries is here now. So technical framework is the next one, right? So from conceptual framework to ethical framework to the technical framework of the documentary. This is where photography, videography, that is what you do. You take a camera and go in the field, right? And you take a mobile phone with good resolution, and these days mobile phones are being used. But the idea is, if you know the rule of 7, it's going to help you out. The first rule is here that the script has to be clear in your head. Right? Because it's not an actor whom you need to narrate a script, right? It's a script that you should be making for yourself first. That what is the narrative have you heard? For example, I'll give you an example. In COVID times, people went back, migrants. Many people documented migrants coming back from cities to villages. Uttarakhand has huge case study. If you study Down to Earth magazine, you'll find it there, right? So rule of 7, first is your script. What narratives are already existing? And what meta narrative is there? For example, it's narrative of a narrative. How this person has made this narrative. Who is that person? From which positionality has he written? What is the perspective of that narrative that you already hear? All these things you should know at the first place to make your script. Then is context citing. That is through cognitive mapping. Cognitive mapping is mental mapping through your understanding. So if you know the context of the thing that you're going to present, you will figure it out. Sitting here, if I tell you, go to India Gate, right? Go to Rashtrapati Bhavan. I just uttered a word and you, just like a Google map, you said, okay, I'll go from here, I'll take left turn, I'll go right turn, and then I'll reach, right? This is the distance and this is the time it will take. This is what you did is mental mapping. Just when I said, you have to go to India Gate or Rashtrapati Bhavan in Delhi. Just by my saying an instruction, you mapped it in your head. That mapping should be done by every documentary maker before actually shooting, right? So very important is context. Then it is very important what is scale, which is macro, meso, micro. The phenomena, the people, the representations. What are you projecting? At what scale? Is it a micro level thing or a bigger level thing or a medium level thing, meso level thing, right? So you need to be very aware, because whatever you represent, it has to match. Like for example, if you're taking a micro study phenomena and you're showing something at a macro level at the end, it does not match the entire work. So everything should fall into the place of scale. Then fourth point again is very important, that people have dreams, but money is important as well for fulfilling them, right? So resources. If you really want to record and present a documentary, first of all is make a budget, make a team, find your instruments. How are you going to purchase them or rent them, or how are you going to afford them, right? These are the most important things before shooting. Technical framework, budgeting, right? What is the budget that you have? If you have budget of say X money and the requirement is more than X, don't dream of making a documentary of that expenditure. Bring it down in your ways, right? So this is what is important, and to be realist is very important. right? You can have dreams of making a documentary like anybody on National Geographic, but for that you need a bigger budget, a bigger team and instruments as well, right? So what is that framework that you should understand? Then is the time, that is it taking days, is it taking hours, is it taking months? You should be aware, because you don't have that much time for many, because you're surrounded with so many work, right? If you are doing only documentary making, then also you need to figure it out that what is the optimum time that you're going to give for this, making this documentary, right? So in time framework, what happens? Your resources are distributed. If you extend your time, it means your budget will increase. These are the little things that matter, and not matters when you are already doing it, matters beforehand during the planning stage. Then comes review of literature. Now when I say review of literature, many people think it's only for PhD students. It's not like that. A review of literature is any literature that you can find related to your narrative that you're going to show in your documentary. It can be newspaper clipping, it can be a magazine that talks about the same thing that you're going to make a documentary on. Find your literature. Find the perceptions in the market about the same thing that you're going to represent from any source, right? And the seventh is actually execution and production. Right? So this is rule of 7 for understanding the technicality of keeping records in document, right? Then most important is the planning of the shoot here. Now comes to the point to remember while you're executing the shoot, when you're going for the field and doing the shoot. So first thing is, there is no fixed path to great photo and documentary. So after this session is over, don't ask me questions like, sir, tell us which is the best way, which is the great way of shooting a photo or documentary. It is very contextual and it is to the person, because it's on your own sense, right? There's nothing called a great photo or great documentary. Greatness lies in your own head, right? And also when it is accepted by masses, people say it's great, right? So you can have parameters of assessment of a great photo or documentary, right? Somebody may say the photo on your screen is the worst photo you have seen for a silhouette, but for me it's my beautiful silhouette when I was traveling, right? So that's what is saying that you should not follow a fixed path. First thing, why fixed path should not be followed? Because breaking these stereotypes is very important at the same time. If somebody has taken a shot like this, you also want to take it like that. Don't always do that. Try and figure out some other way. Then it's all about light and frame. Now the lighting condition becomes really important, and very few people understand that mobile photography, which is through, already registered light and frames in your phones, have limitations at the same time, as good as it gets, right? So in all limitations, you should know where the light is coming from, and light is the most important thing for photography and documentary shooting, right? And also how you're making the frames. If you are anyone a fan of Ram Gopal Verma movies, you know what kind of frames he makes, right? Low frame, low lighting, up lighting, and so many other things, diffuse lighting. So what you need to understand is little on the light aspect. How much light is apt light? How much will be overexposure or underexposure? You need to study it a little. You need to practice this before actual shooting. Then comes stability. Now when you are shooting it, you should understand that certain documentaries have to be unstable. Why? Because we are doing it on bike, we're doing it on car. There, if frame shakes a little, the viewer knows, okay, this is on bike, this is on car. But if you are taking an interview from somebody who is sitting on the table and that is shaking, it's not good. It means what? Stability according to the context of documentary becomes really important. Then is your fabrication of natural environment, that most of the people tend to do using reflectors, using some artificial things and creations. If you are shooting in a natural environment, if you want to be a realist documentary shooter, not in studio shoot, then avoid fabrication for any reason. That's very important. Then comes detailing in your context. Detailing may be if you are showing something which is, suppose say poverty, if you are representing, detailing is as important as somebody's expression, right? Somebody's expression could say that how poor that person is, or how, the frame of mind of that person because of poverty if you're talking to that person. If you click poverty in a smiling face, the thing will be represented something like, even in poverty you can smile, keep smiling even if you're poor, right? But the whole idea was to represent poverty, right? So the great movie which was made by Raju Hirani, Hungry India, Poor India, that typical thing that happened in Munna Bhai. Right? So most of the people have a particular way of representing poverty. You can break that context by detailing it. How you detail is, there are several movies and inspirations that you can have who have done the same kind of work on slums, on poverty, on those things which are, downgraded. Even if you're doing downgrading of environment, pollution, waste management, anything that you're taking as a subject, you must be in details, right? Lesser details means lesser impact. It's very important to frame accordingly. And movie is made in a cognitive memory before the actual shoot. This is very important for all of us to understand here. That actually before shooting, movie should be in your head. If you can have that kind of visuals in your head, that this is where I'm going to stand, this is where I'm going to shoot, this is the thing that I want an aerial photo, I want a drone shot, I want a close shot, I want a long shot, right? I want an overhead shot. What exactly you need is, first you should document in your head rather than just go to the field and just push the button and do 500 pictures and waste 400 of them and finally select 100 of them. Because of digital technology that we have, we don't care about how many clicks do we do, right? That is very important for a cognitive memory to be in place while you are actually going to shoot it finally, because it should resemble your actual thought that you had while you were planning. It should not go haywire, right? And remember, this last statement is creativity starts when technical part ends. Now, if you don't know how to operate a DSLR, you have bought a DSLR and using it on auto mode, it's a waste of money, it's waste of your time, waste of your creativity. So first be friendly with your technique and in terms of the camera, the tripod, the instrument that you're going to use. And then when you are thorough with it, it's just like riding a bike. When you learn riding a bicycle or a bike, your entire thing is on, how I'm handling it, how I'm paddling, when I'm shifting the gear. But once you learn it, what happens? You flow through. It comes to you in natural ways, in your reflex action. So if you are too worried about your shutter speed, if you're too worried about clicking the picture and holding it, or what is happening, then you will lose on creativity. Creativity begins where technicality ends. Remember this very important thing here in documentary shooting, documentary making. And knowing the instrument that's why very important, right? So all these things that I have listed here, these kind of instruments, camera, lenses, filter, features, limitations, tripods, mounts, gimbal, what kind of instrument are you using? Learn about it first. Look into your requirements, your budget. Sound recording is very important when you're taking an interview. But sometimes natural sound becomes more important than taking, so you have to record it. You cannot use it later when you come back home. Oh, I'll create it through taking from some website. Right? Flashes are very important where low lit condition is there. Battery backup is very important, so you need to be aware about it. Then you have memory cards, very important because you need to have a backup. Then data storage backup, you cannot carry everything everywhere, so you need to have a backup. You cannot carry laptops in greater heights. Suppose if I'm working in Himalaya, so I need to have a backup, so I'll create some bigger backups in terms of buying some data storage package accordingly. Weather protection shield, because if you're working in an area which is incessantly raining or snowfall is happening or things are happening, you need to be aware about it. And cleaner apparatus. Very important that if you're clicking a picture, dust is not there on the screen or the lens. These are little things that will matter when you are actually going into post-production. Now comes to me, what I use in my documentaries generally is a mobile phone which I had called OnePlus 5. Then I used a gimbal alongside with it called DJI Osmo Mobile 2. Then I had a DSLR, Canon 80D that I used, a vehicle which was through permission I got from J&K government to work in Ladakh, so government permission and the vehicle to access the restricted areas. My contacts, obviously local people needs to be contacted, so I went there, talked to them, got some local policemen with me, local pradhans of the villages with me, and so many other people, women, children, everybody. And then post-production, right? That is through the software. You can use any software. I used Adobe Premiere Pro. So these are the certain things that I used for my work, and some last moment tips that I can give you is this 10 tips. Make sure it is well lit, less windy, stability is very important. For silhouettes and light streak shots, position and shutter speed very important. Camera should always be held near your body. If you're holding camera away from your body, chances of vibrating it is more while just clicking the shot. Use it any platform. If you don't have a tripod, make a tripod of bricks or whatever, rocks, right? Whatever is there. If your friend is there with you, ask him to be stable and place the camera on his shoulders or head if you're taking a shot, right? Shooting wildlife, the click sound is very important. Many times it distracts the wildlife because little sound and the best image of a tiger or of a deer can go away. Then take a deep breath. Stop while pulling the trigger button. Very important to minimize the vibration while you're shooting, clicking the picture, because if you blow up to a large screen, it will again go into pixels, right? So avoid straight flat shoot. Sometimes people just straight away, avoiding any angle, just, you know, straight away represent things. Taking a little angular thing always gives a little meaning, right? You can try this with your face itself. Click your face from 6 angles, 5 angles, and see which is the best shot when you are giving expressions, right? You can do this for any other thing as well. Look for the patterns, shapes, very important. Some straight lines, some meandering river, something which is having a clear-cut pattern becomes really important while you're representing something. Even a neat and clear sphere or building, when you're taking a top shot, if you're taking a shot for skyscraper, very important is the pattern. For example, very famous Mumbai slums and skyscraper look, urban landscape, right? And avoid risking yourself going to the extent of falling down a cliff or a hill for shooting. So remember, do it if only professional environment is there, right? If you have all the ropes and things, then only go for that kind of adventure shoots. Don't just go with your phone and just, I'll climb on the highest peak and I'll click the pictures, right? So these are some of the last moment tips which I wanted to share with you people. And here are some you already aware about, so much about these already apps existing: Altimeter, Compass, Photosynth, Calculator Made Easy, Theodolite, Google Maps, Dropbox, right? So many things are there: GPS, Kit, Altitude, Clinometer. So all these, whichever is required, you can find an app. You can do some research on which app would help you in getting that data and recording it and then representation, right? So you can use some mobile apps also for your representation. And the last thing is your post-shoot production work. That is your final frontier, because now what you have done is you have cooked, but now it's about plating what you have cooked, right? That's the final frontier. That's when you're representing it to the world. How good you shoot does not matter, but if you process that as well as you shot it, as you thought in the beginning, then it makes sense. So while shooting, make sure that you don't regret while you're sitting on your table with your laptop and doing post-production. Oh, I missed the clip. I did not do this. I should have taken another angle. So try not to have regrets, and for that you need to work before. Don't overburden yourself with too much of editing work. Less edited work always looks good in a documentary. More editing will leave out so many things. And post-production has limitations, so understand your limitations, right? Because you cannot recreate so many things that you did not shoot. So it has limitations. So plating what you have cooked is the thing, right? That's really important. And if you want to watch my documentary, I have a YouTube channel called The GeoEcologist itself. You can go to the playlist called Perspectives in Geoecology, where I have 2 documentaries called Spiti Valley and Fieldwork in Geography, that is exploring Ladakh. So you can check them out. And if any one of you want to connect with me in future, I'm there on Instagram as well. So you can join me there as the same name, The GeoEcologist. So that will be all. And thank you all for the patience and your valuable time. So that's all from my side here. And I hope everybody heard, and I'm open to discussions now. Thank you so much for all your patience.